Hello fellow bike people! I'm filming this at kind of an awkward time because we're in the middle of a global health crisis and we're all stuck inside because social isolation. Basically everything is closed, all the stores are closed, all of the public services are closed, the libraries, the skate parks, the trails, all of that. Thankfully, one thing that isn't closed is cycling. There are some caveats though. In some areas of the world, cycling is pretty limited because social isolation has to be really extreme to contain the virus. But in a lot of cases, as long as you stay your distance and don't ride in big groups, cycling is a perfectly fine form of social isolation. And if you're planning to spend a lot of time on your bike, it's going to be important that your bike's really comfortable for you. Now a lot of people add those gel pads to their seat and that's about it, because they think squishy equals comfortable. Squishy does not equal comfortable. Ergonomic equals comfortable. So what I'm going to show you how to do is set up your bike with a baseline fit, something that's pretty neutral and is good for you to work off of to fine-tune the fit to the exact way you want. Now under normal circumstances, you'd be able to go to a bike shop and get a really fine-tuned fit done, and there are a lot of different ways that professionals will do it. The way I'm going to show you is just a basic guide, and all you need for this is some basic tools. Now for most bikes, all you're going to need is a set of Allen keys. That can be those the T-handle ones, or it can be the tri-Allen ones, but most of the time what you're going to have in your tool set at home is this style. These are just normal Allen keys, and you got to make sure you use the metric ones, because the imperial ones will usually damage the bolts on bikes. For some older and more basic bikes, you're going to need a wrench to adjust the seat, but most bikes it's going to be an Allen key. So the bike I'm working on here is my cousin Kai's dirt jumper, and the reason I'm using it is because it's kind of representative of a lot of bikes that people are just going to have lying around their house, and something that a lot of casual cyclists will have. 26-inch wheels, aluminum hardtail frame, front suspension, and a disc brake. First thing we're going to do is start with the seat. If you look at this saddle right here, you can see it's kind of nose up. A lot of people are going to like that on a dirt jump bike because it'll give you a bit more control in the air, but for riding under normal circumstances, you want your seat basically level. So to get your seat level, you can be really picky with it and use a bubble leveler, but you can also just eyeball out the highest 2 points of the seat and make them nice and level. For most bikes, this is going to be either a 6mm or a 5mm Allen key. Now this saddle is still very slightly nose up, but it's much more level, so we can use that to sit on to find our saddle height. Finding your saddle height, if it's not a quick release system, it's usually going to be a 4mm or 5mm Allen key. So what I've done here is aligned the top of the saddle roughly with the top of my hip, and when I sit over the bike, I'm going to look to be on my tiptoes and on the balls of my feet with both of my heels a little bit up off the ground. Another way to look at it is having one pedal at its very lowest point, and while you're sitting on the saddle, putting a foot on that pedal, you should have a slight bend in your knee. So now that the saddle is set, we can start working on the handlebars. The first thing you're going to want to do is find the rise in your handlebars and make sure it's straight vertical. If I turn these bars to the side, you can see the rise on the bars is actually leaning forwards ahead of the bike. If I roll the handlebars back, it's going to make the sweep and the rise in a much more ergonomic position. It's going to be comfortable on your wrists and it's going to be comfortable on your shoulders. So now that the handlebars are rolled back, instead of being in this kind of position, your arms are going to be in this kind of position, which is much more comfortable. So now, sitting on the bike, you can see the handlebar is okay, but the lever is much too high. Like this, I have to bend my wrist up like that to grab the lever. So what I want to do is lower the lever down into a position where I can keep my hand and wrist going completely straight towards it. That's much better. Next, I want to make sure that the shifter matches. I can reach both shifter buttons relatively easily, but I have to reach a little bit over like this to do it. So I'm going to loosen the shifter and roll it towards me up over the handlebar. Just like that. And now, the shifter buttons are very easy to reach. Once you have the angles set up on your shifters and levers, what you might also want to do is move them further inwards on the bar relative to the grip. Doing that is going to move your fingers further out on the brake lever and give you a lot more leverage, so you only need to use one finger. It's also going to give you a bit more space to work around the shifters. At first glance, it might not look much different, but making these adjustments is going to have a huge impact over the course of a longer ride. Once you've done all of this, the way to make sure that it's right for you is to take the bike out for a test ride. Once you've got more than, say, half an hour, 45 minutes under your belt, you know what the bike's going to feel like, and you can make some changes based on that. So you can adjust your levers further, you can adjust your bar angle further, you can adjust your saddle angle, your saddle height, or even the fore-aft adjustment on your saddle. Unless you're riding your bike competitively, the fit is kind of a subjective thing, so you can always feel free to make whatever changes you want, but this is just a good way to make the bike fit as well as possible with the parts that you have.